we're trying to use it in ways that drive efficiency for the team. I think that, with presentations or quick analysis that we always have to gut check, but we're trying to leverage it in that way.
Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Playbook presented by PDQ, Pretty Damn Quick and Details Interactive. Here you'll take away 3 game-winning marketing plays every episode to take back to your team. I'm your host, Mark Friedman, and my career has been focused on direct-to-consumer marketing, direct mail, physical retail, and digital commerce. This is episode number 145, and my guest is Stacey Warshaw, the head of digital marketing and e-commerce at LoveShackFancy, a brand that has successfully blended storytelling, community, and commerce into a powerful omnichannel experience. Stacey's career spans some of the most recognized names in fashion and retail, including Club Monaco, Ralph Lauren, Rebecca Taylor, Loft, and Ann Taylor. Across each of these roles, she's built a reputation for balancing brand and performance, creativity and analytics, what she calls the left brain and the right brain of marketing. In today's episode, we're going to dive into how Stacey built her career by raising her hand and taking on diverse responsibilities early on, what she's learned navigating wholesale-driven businesses while trying to grow direct-to-consumer channels, and how she's thinking about the future, from omnichannel measurement to personalization and the role AI is starting to play inside modern marketing teams. This is a conversation about evolution of a career, of an industry, and how great marketers adapt along the way. But before we get started, a quick thank you as always to Max Brandstetter of the Wild Business Growth Podcast for producing this episode. You can reach him at max@maxpodcasting.com to help bring your podcast to life. Let's open the playbook. Ready, break. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining the Marketing Playbook podcast. Today I'm joined by Stacey Warshaw. Stacey's the head of digital marketing and e-commerce at LoveShackFancy, where she leads the brand's digital growth across marketing, site experience, and omnichannel strategy, including oversight of business and customer analytics. She specializes in scaling premium retail businesses by optimizing the full customer journey from acquisition through conversion and retention, while building strong cross-functional teams. Prior to LoveShackFancy, Stacey held leadership roles at Loft and Rebecca Taylor and began her career at Club Monaco and Ralph Lauren. Across these roles, she has driven e-commerce growth and digital evolution for some of the most recognized names in fashion. She's passionate about creating seamless customer-first experiences and using data and insights to scale thoughtfully in an ever-evolving retail landscape. Stacey, welcome to the show.
So happy to be here, Mark.
And I'm happy to have you here. I feel like I know you forever. We're kind of newer friends. It's not so new, I guess, anymore. It's more than a year now. So obviously have really enjoyed getting to know you, working with you, for you a bit. Glad that you could join us today.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. We are old friends, Mark.
There we go. That's great. All right, so I know you've listened to some of the shows. In all of the shows, we get the guest's first story, where you grew up, some background on what might have been going on in your life that would have suggested your career would take the shape that it has.
Yeah, so I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut. I actually live there now. I didn't always live here, but I grew up here. I have 2 amazing parents, so just like really supportive, loving, they're the best. They really are. And played a huge role in my life, and just a really supportive family in general. I have a sister who I'm very close with as well. And then I live in Stamford now with my husband, who grew up in Stamford, and my 2 girls who are 9 and 4. A couple of things that really stuck out to me when I, know you are going to ask this question. One is that, I always had like retail. My family, they were not retailers, but I had retail like in my blood. I used to 2 stories. One is that I had this like arts and crafts store that I created, and I had my parents bring me to like the craft supply store, and I'd get things and I'd create them. I'd like make art projects, picture frames and t-shirts. And then I would go to the bottom of my driveway with my friends and I would sell them. And we'd like literally have like egg crate box, those like plastic egg crate or like drink. I don't know you know what I'm talking about, like the
Yeah,
egg
sure.
crate type thing.
Sure.
Yeah. And we'd sell them with bottom of the driveway. And I like, got enough money to buy pizzas for my friends. And that was like my goal. But it was like, I was running a store in my mind. And the other one is really funny. My dad's parents lived in Western Massachusetts. And when they moved out of their house, my dad moved them to Stanford. They did this massive tag sale, and my grandma literally had 50 years of things in her house. And I ran that tag sale like it was a designer store. I'm like, can I help you? Can I help you find something? How about this? Recommendations. And I really just, always kind of go back to those, right? Like I was always looking to market and sell and like turn my grandma's like old stuff into something desirable for other people. And I loved every second of it. Those are two stories that I feel like, all right, I'm going to be in retail. And I actually, one other thing, my dad, when I graduated college, I got a job that paid me very little money. And he's like, you cannot take that job. He's like, can't you market dishwashers? And I'm like, I don't want to market dishwashers. I want to market something that I'm passionate about, that I can relate to, and that like makes me want to get up in the morning. So I don't market dishwashers.
I told you that, we jump around despite we may have a flow of the show, we jump around based upon what the guests, have to say. So your point about selling, something that you're passionate about, is that really, it sounds like it's important to you, but, for somebody that has a job and they may not be passionate about it and they're marketing a particular product. For a long time, I worked for a business that was, selling plus size women's apparel. I couldn't really relate to that. And then I worked at Steve Madden and, it was shoes. I could relate a little more to that. So is that really important to you?
So I think there are different ways to look at it, right? I mean, I really always loved fashion. I actually went to thinking I was going to go to college. I went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I thought I was going to go to do fashion merchandising. Like that's what I thought I was going to do. But I quickly learned that, that wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I wanted to be in retail. And so I think it was, I'm passionate about, yes, I could market. There's a difference between marketing dishwashers and marketing like clothes or shoes. Like I felt like excited by it, but I wasn't going to be designing the clothes and I wasn't going to be merchandising the clothes. So it was something else for me. And I think it's finding an area of the business that I was passionate about. And talking about my career, I had exposure to a lot of different things and was able to figure out where I fit in and what made me go, like made me excited to get up, and made me excited to dig in more and learn. So I think it's like finding your passion within an area of a business.
So go back to, kind of the early stages of career. PR communications was, one of the places that you got to start. And being in an area like that is really important to be able to storytell. Back then, storytelling was important to you. And talk a little bit about how storytelling has been this common thread through the many roles that you've had.
Yeah, and I think, thinking about my career, I would always say that I have kind of a balance of the left brain, right brain. And I think that that's super important today. Not everyone has to have that, but in terms of like leading, in the way that I lead in my business and my roles, you have to understand the role that content plays. It's like content is king. It always has been. And I think there was a time where it was like content didn't matter as much. It was performance, and you can drive performance, but without the right content and the right brand, performance doesn't happen and work. And so it really comes down to building and supporting the brand and ensuring that the content and the storytelling is there and strong. And so I think PR, I sort of fell into my first role at PR. A friend of mine got a job at a PR firm called Nike Communications, not related to the shoe at all, from college. So she got a job there, and the person who hired her went to Wisconsin too. And so he then hired me. That was a job my dad said you can't take. He was like, no, no, no. But I did. And honestly, it was back in the day when like you weren't emailing everyone, you were picking up the phone. I was my first client was Pernod Ricard and Allied Demac. So I was doing Stoli, Kahlua, Beefeater, Stoli Elite, like, and I was making up cocktails and pitching them to like the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, literally picking up the phone and calling an editor and pitching these cocktails and making it sound like it was something really exciting. And I had no idea. I just graduated college. Like I was not a bartender, but it was, it was all about getting the placement. And so it's very funny to look back. We used to like make these cocktails in the back and take pictures of them. And it was always one of the things that the founder said. She's like, if you believe it, it's true. She's like, if you believe it, it's true. I'm like, okay, I can do this, right? It's having the confidence to do it. And it taught me a lot about picking up the phone and calling someone, like cold calling. Like, I mean, I don't know how I did that. But you had to put the story together, you had to pick up the phone, you had to pitch it, you had to follow up. And it's like just a huge part of, I think, laying the foundation for kind of where my career went, but just funny to think back on.
You made a move to Club Monaco, part of the Ralph Lauren organization. So, what was that move? Why did you make that move? What were you hoping to gain from that kind of a change?
So I'd say that one of the threads throughout my career is just all about the relationships that I've made. And really, I mean, the first job I got was because, there's this Wisconsin connection. And then I had this great boss, and she was, I don't know, 4 years older than me, but she seemed like, so much more seasoned. But she taught me so much. We had a great relationship, and she left the business to go to Club Monaco. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. 6 months later, she brought me over. Like she just hired me because we had this relationship and she was building a team. And so I went to work with her. And I remember my salary doubled, Mark, and I was like, I'm rich. My dad was still like, you're not rich. That was so funny.
You talk about following somebody. We've talked a lot about this over the many shows. Networking, maintaining relationships. You talk about picking up the phone and calling, and that's almost a lost art now, but networking really matters. I know we'll talk about this a little bit later. You've worked for other people and with other people multiple times in your career, as I have, and it's super important to be able to maintain relationships. So when you got there, what was your remit?
I don't know if I was an assistant marketing manager over North America. And I don't remember how many stores there were at this point, but we were in the US and Canada. And the team, marketing was so different back then. We didn't have a website, there was no e-commerce, right? We had a marketing site. I don't even like the job, just it's changed so much. I mean, I helped with manage all of the store events across the US and Canada. I was like the liaison. What kind of promotions were we having and making sure they had the information, and then learning to send out an email. Honestly, I think the first time we did it, it took 2 weeks. We like designed it. It was horizontal, it wasn't vertical. We didn't even have a website for it to click to. It was a marketing website. So it's like you click through and you go to like what, right? Like what do you do from that kind of email back then? Really dating myself, but it took us forever. And then I had to work. We had the luxury of being part of Ralph Lauren and getting their resources. And I was working with a company called MBS, which managed our database. And I like learned so much. I'm like, oh, what is this? What? And that's really like, I mean, I learned so much doing that, but sending out one email took forever. And the amount of emails we send out now, right? Just like in a day or in a week, it's unfathomable. But so I did that. And then it was, my career at Club Monaco really was like, I got access to everything, right? Because we were a small team. Someone left and my boss took over PR. So I was back into like doing PR and marketing and press previews. And like I was walking editors through the showroom and talking about the brand. And then we started, when influencers started to come about, we were starting to work with them. And I did the first Facebook post and the first tweet. Like there were just so many things you just kind of did because someone had to do them.
That's a good thing for folks that are earlier in their career. I think some folks have the attitude, geez, you were hired to do this. And if you're now being asked to widen your scope, some people don't like that. What guidance would you give people that are early in their career about taking on as much as you possibly can to help you learn?
Do everything, like absorb it all. You get access to things that like people, may not ever see. And I think you just have to take it and run with it and figure it out. And part of it is just learning on the job. And I was that person where like, hey, we have to do this. I'm like, I'll do it. I'll figure it out. And so people just started to give me things and I got promoted very quickly at Club Monaco. I mean, I did gosh, I did every job under the sun. I styled mannequins in the basement of the Stair at Lehigh building for our marketing website. And I'm like, I'm not a stylist. I'm like, this is not for me. Like, I went to big, awesome, like so privileged to go to these amazing photo shoots with like Patrick DeMarchelier and Bert Stern and Peter Lindbergh. And I'm like, this is not for me. So like part of it was how it's like, process of elimination, right? You get to do all of these things and you're like, nope, nope, that's not for me. And you sort of gravitate towards the things that you learn what excites you and what kind of makes you want to get up and go to work the next day. And so I would just say, take every opportunity, be selfish about it, right? Like dive in, dig in, learn as much as possible, and you'll be better off for it.
Static checkouts are costing you money. Every shopper sees the same offers and too many walk away. That's why Shopify's fastest growing brands use PDQ, Pretty Damn Quick, the checkout segmentation platform. PDQ personalizes the checkout experience by creating tailored flows for each customer segment, whether they're first time buyers, high spenders, or returning VIPs. Their platform runs ongoing A B tests, automatically sets the best performing experience, and keeps optimizing for higher conversion and AOV. The result? More completed checkouts, less abandonment, and millions in uplift. Discover your brand's optimal checkout with PDQ at prettydamnquick.com. You had a stint with a company that you were mentioning to me called Comar, which I hadn't heard of. You'll tell us what it is, wholesale opportunity. I worked in a few companies that were wholesale focused, that were trying to go direct to consumer. So tell us about Comar, but specifically the challenges of working in a wholesale focused business where you're the D2C person.
Yeah, so I was definitely like the outsider there. Comar is an intimate and sleepwear wholesale business, and from what I know, I think they still do. They produce sleepwear for tons of retailers out there. I mean, probably more than I even know. They sold at Target and Walmart, Old Navy. They may have done Ralph Lauren, I don't know, but they owned a number of brands, and I helped launch 4 websites for their own brands. And we were the outsider in a wholesale world, right? We were like the small fish in the big pond. And even though that was where things were, even at that time, that's where things were going, it was definitely challenging. I mean, we were never the priority. They knew that it was an opportunity, but it just wasn't like it was, I don't think they ever saw that it was going to be as big as it should have been. But they had a very, successful, I think it was a family business. We were a small, lean team running 4 websites, and I think we did good stuff.
What did you learn from that experience that that helped you think through perhaps where you were going to look for your next opportunity, or where, when something presented itself, you were saying to yourself, yes, that's interesting? Because I guess your next opportunity was at a business called Rebecca Taylor.
I think that, when you're starting off and have like those brands had brand awareness, but we didn't have the budgets to support really driving the awareness we needed to support a DTC business. I don't know, honestly, this is over 10 or 12 years ago now, so I'm not sure what's happened to all those sites. But definitely, learn that acquisition is not easy, right? And acquisition isn't just about media dollars. It really is about that marriage of content and commerce, right? It's about the performance, but it's really comes back to the brand and driving that brand love and the consideration, which is really, really hard for a smaller site and smaller business that's not a priority.
In Rebecca Taylor, it was a priority. It was the namesake brand of the business. You oversaw both, let's call it, brand marketing and performance marketing in e-commerce. So talk about that experience and the team that you had around you.
Yeah, so that was a great experience. That's a job that I also got through a someone who used to be at Ralph Lauren. She was the president of Ralph Lauren. I call her like my fairy god boss.
There's a theme here, right? Because when we
Yeah,
talk about Love Shack, you worked with some folks from Rebecca Taylor who are now at Love Shack, right?
exactly, exactly. And so she recommended me for this job, and it was such a great experience. I really enjoyed that kind of time in my career. But my team there was lean. I mean, it was a different. We were owned by Kellwood, so Rebecca Taylor had sold to Kellwood, so we had this kind of like larger brand managing us, and we had it was everything was lean, right? We had like one person doing every job. But it was a really passionate team. What I learned there, I think that's really when a lot of marketing channels started to be not built out, but like more diversified and a little bit more strategic and really starting to like learn about measurement in the early days. And so that was definitely hard to balance. And it was working with a founder. It was my first time working with a founder, and that's a different experience. I mean, she had an amazing, like incredible creative vision. Her name was on the brand, right? So like you have to, learn that very quickly. But what I learned there is that like balance between, brand and performance, right? Like you couldn't always just chase ROI at the expense of the brand. It's not that like anyone says you should, but it was really obvious there. Like it was definitely a learning curve. And you couldn't spend on brand without like an eye on the returns. And you have your CFO kind of on the side saying like, hey, what's happening here? But I think it just solidified, right? Like brand led performance is like that is key.
So when you're in a business, like that, and this goes for any e-commerce business nowadays, and maybe we'll digress here a little bit. You've got people calling you all day long, I imagine, and emailing you. Well, they're not calling you; they're writing you all day long about the next best feature that you can be adding to your site, or the next functionality you can be adding, to your business. How do you evaluate the new things that come across your plate, and whether or not they're a fit for your business?
Oh God, that's like the $1 million question. I think it's so hard right now because I do get calls all the time and I take a lot of meetings, especially now at a smaller organization, right? It's how I learn, it's how I understand what's out there. I think that there's probably like a limit to how many I should be doing because then it just drives confusion. But we do a lot of POCs and I think I just believe in testing. I had a boss once who said that if you're not failing, you're not trying. But I think if like you're not making mistakes, you're not trying. And I think I really, that really stands true or holds true with me. And I like love that saying because you do have to test. And I think if there are low risk ways to test or low lift, then why not? And I think if, where I am today in my business, we really do need to evolve and things are moving so quickly that I think it's an important part of what I do today.
Stacey, you spent time at Club Monaco, Rebecca Taylor. I see this trend now of fashion, and then you make a move to Loft and Taylor. Much larger company, I imagine, many more stores, more syncing between digital and stores. So, how did you get to that role, and how was it different from some of the other roles that you had?
Yeah, so I got a call for that role from a recruiter, and I was at a startup at the time, and I was like, that's not a brand that I necessarily was like, oh, I'm so passionate about, like you said before, right? You have to be passionate, but it was still retail. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take the meeting. I also got a little push from one of my mentors, which was helpful. And what I saw there, I was at a small startup at the time, was process and structure and bigger wallets and like this could be a good move for me. It was still retail but it wasn't a brand that I'm like, oh my god, I learned to love it. I learned to really love it, and really love my time there, but it was just I was ready for a change and this seemed like some of the things I needed to kind of pivot on.
It's interesting. I talk to a lot of folks and they talk about their careers, and in some cases, kind of like mine, I wasn't crafting my career. I wasn't saying I did this, now I have to do that, and then I have to do this. It kind of just happened. As you were thinking about your career, were you looking for opportunities to fill the holes that you felt like you had, or were these opportunistic changes?
I would love to say it was very strategic, but no. I mean, I think I'm a working mom. I have two little girls and my life has changed. And I don't think you really know what motherhood does as a working mom. I wear my mom badge on my sleeve because I feel like I had no idea. I had no idea. My gosh, I feel like no one talked about it, but I was like, oh my God, how do people do this? How I said to my mom once, I'm like, how did you survive as a working mom without Amazon? Like I literally it's So I think in terms of my career, right? Like as my life changed, my priorities changed, and sometimes and I learned it doesn't have to be the flashiest, sexiest company. I think you just make changes for what's right in your life at the moment. If I was filling up checking out a box, oh my God, I that would be hard. I think I've done it by my with my changes in
Yeah,
my
you
career,
have.
but
That's kind of why I was asking because, a lot of folks have what I call this foundational moment in their career. It's a company that they've worked for 7, 8, 10 years. It really, crafts them, for the future. And then others, have a number of different roles, nothing that they would point to that was foundational, but it was a good progression along the way. So just an interesting call out. But at the time that you were at Loft and Ann Taylor, you talked about big pockets. And oftentimes, just because there's big pockets and big infrastructure, there's still challenges, especially around data and understanding where your spending goes and the whole attribution. Were you able to solve for that reasonably well there?
I don't think we were able to solve for it. I think that's an evolution. Measurement is so complicated, but one of the things that I'm so grateful for my time at Lawson and Taylor is their investment in measurement. We worked with an agency who I just loved, and loved because we learned from each other, right? Like it's a push and pull kind of a relationship. But we started off with, an MTA solution, that's obviously evolved. And at this point, this is 8 or 9 years ago. So much has changed. But measurement became foundational, and it was something that the CFO really embraced, right? He believed in it. My bosses believed in it, and we sort of lived and died by it. Ultimately, that evolved as privacy shifted, MTA to MMM, and really leaning, shifting our approach to not just about the channel performance, but the customer performance tied to the channel and how they interacted together. And so I would say that that was a huge, huge plus from working at a large organization. I'm grateful for it because I learned so much. And as a bigger brand, you have bigger budgets and you get more attention from all the partners. You get access to betas and, special events and all the, and then, so when you going back to your question, Mark, about like, my recommendation for younger people, I would say take advantage of everything, right? Like go to the meeting, take the meeting, go to the event, it was just great.
You talked, Stacey, about measurement and attribution. You talked about an agency that you really loved because you learned about them. Feel free to give them a plug. I know you like them,
Oh yeah, Oveda. I really think highly of them. They were amazing partners, super collaborative, and really they became good friends.
and that's important to be able to trust the partners that you work with. The devil is in the details. You probably have heard that phrase time and time again in your professional life. Projects get started with great intentions, but you no longer have the time to pay attention to the little things that could make the difference between success and failure. At Details Interactive, you can discuss your business with a seasoned direct-to-consumer marketing executive who's helped launch and grow web businesses and integrate multi-channel marketing initiatives. Learn more at detailsinteractive.com. Now let's move to your current role. Tell us about LoveShackFancy, and for those that don't know the brand, tell us about it and what your role is.
Love Shack Fancy. It was founded about 13 years ago by Rebecca Hessel Cohen. She is an amazingly creative founder and is very, very involved. We do women's ready to wear, kids. We have a fragrance business, home, and a collaboration business. And so it's a brand that I've admired for a long time. It's a very fun place to work, has a very strong brand DNA, and a lot of great people who work together really hard to make it all happen.
So I've been very lucky to have gotten to know the brand. It's been, I don't know, 3 years or so now when I first got involved. I've loved watching it evolve and grow. So I know why you have a lot of fun with the brand. Tell us, I know your focus predominantly, I think, is e-commerce focused. I know you have an omni-channel view, but tell us about the stores and how many stores are there now?
So we've just opened our 27th store. So we're, growing. Our stores, I think one of the most special things about our business are the stores. They feel very immersive. They have the brand DNA written every inch of those stores, and they have this kind of it's just a fun store to go into 'cause there's so much to explore and take in. And I think they've become a destination for people, which I think is very, very unique. And people I know really kind of strive to have that happen.
My wife and I were down in the Shrewsbury, New Jersey store yesterday, and I've had the opportunity to be in a number of the stores. And I think one of the things that they have done an amazing job with is different footprints in many of the stores. But you walk in there and the brand. It looks like Love Shack Fancy, and that's really incredible. And I love walking into a store and watching people shop the store and how they look around. I mean, I'm looking at them in a different way than most other people would be looking. But it's just amazing how they're looking at the clothes, they're looking at the walls, they're looking at everything. That brand DNA is so important. You've got customers that shop online, you got customers that shop in stores. How do you think about the omni-channel customer?
Yeah, so I'd like to say it's, really easy, but as you are well aware of, it's not. We are not a small brand, but not a big brand. And we really had to invest in the kind of data infrastructure to allow us to look at the customer at the omni level. And it's not perfect. It's definitely not perfect, but we do think about the customer holistically and their individual life cycle and their journeys. And as a brand, there are many brands out there that have lots of categories, but this brand is still, I think we're learning how to segment in the way we need to segment and message in the way we need to message with all of these kind of growing businesses. Within women's, we have swim and we have active, and girls has the same thing. And, really, I think we're still in the beginning stages right now of personalizing her journey. But the customer, as everyone knows, the omni customer is the most valuable. So we've got to think with that lens.
In the brand, there's so many Instagram followers that are following the Love Shack brand. I know you're playing heavily in influencers. Talk about, if you can, the influencer program and how that's evolving for you.
I think from the outside looking in, it looks like we have this massive program because we have so many people who wear us. But we're in the stages of really monetizing it and being a little bit more, I'd say, strategic in it. Not that it wasn't strategic, it just served different purposes for the business. But looking at it as a performance channel, right, with a funnel, just like we do anything else, any other channel, because it really is. And as anyone out there in the industry knows, the shopping journey has changed so much with the growth of influencers that it's impacted how every channel performs. And so I'd say that we've launched Shop My, looking at different ways to measure performance there, which I think is important, and also to leverage the content in ways that optimize performance.
You have also developed a personalization, customization business that's relatively new. Maybe give that a plug.
Yeah, we did. So it took a very long time. We thought it was going to be we're going to launch this in a few months, but it was a considerable effort across the team. But we now offer, customization on, gosh, probably over 50 products now on our site. So robes, everyone loves a robe, customized with your name on it. We've got home and pillows and blankets and sweatshirts. And gosh, there's more. We have state bags we just launched last week, one of our collaborations, and you can customize those. And the list is growing. And so I think, people love Love Shack and they love gifting Love Shack. And now we have a way to kind of to make it even, better, personalize it, charge a little bit of a fee. It's shipped from our warehouse. It's exciting to see because the appetite is really there. And it's one of those things. My friend had a baby this weekend, and I'm like, oh, gonna buy a blanket with her name on it. Perfect gift. So now, as the awareness gets out there, I think that demand will continue to grow.
I'm looking at my granddaughter on the frame that I have here, as you were talking about baby gifts and all. You talked about collaborations, and that's been a big piece of the growth of the business and the success of the business. Talk about the philosophy in the company about partnering and collaborating with some of the companies that you have.
Yeah, so collaborations are an interesting part of the business, and different collaborations have different purposes. Some are for new customer acquisition, some are for revenue, driving revenue. And, I think we always want something that's going to excite and surprise and delight the customer. We always want it to sell, obviously, that's always the intent. But there are some collaborations that bring in better quality customers than others. And that's something that I've really learned to understand, I think, right? And we do our best to, retain all the customers, and we know that some will be easier to retain than others. But really, there's this element of driving buzz and excitement, and it's very easy to underestimate the demand on some of these things because, sometimes we're very surprised at how much people love it. But it's been great, and it's been a nice lever and a nice addition to the brand and part of the growth. So.
There's so many questions that I can ask you, or I would love to ask you about LoveShack to share, but we don't have that much time. But I do want to talk about AI, and I've tended to end a lot of these shows lately with AI because everybody is using AI in different ways. How are you personally, and how is your team within LoveShack leveraging AI for the business?
Yeah, I'd say it's something that we're actively, leaning into, right? I mean, I think everyone is. We're trying to use it in ways that drive efficiency for the team. I think that, with presentations or quick analysis that we always have to gut check, but we're trying to leverage it in that way for emails, all those fun things. But from a business perspective, like I said, there are tons of vendors out there, and everyone is claiming that they are doing AI and slapping AI in this, but like, where is the value? And I think it's really comes down to finding vendors that, again, provide business efficiency, can impact performance, can improve performance, and improve the experience for the customer. So you have to look at it through that lens. There's lots of things you can do with it, but finding the right way is, I think we're navigating that. I don't think anyone has an answer quite yet.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's interesting. I've been working with some people that are earlier in their career, whereas for me, having been in my career for so long, I don't think of AI necessarily as the first thing I'm going to leverage. I'm trying to formulate an idea. That's the way I was, wired. That's the way I grew up. I'm seeing some of these earlier in their career folks, as soon as they're asked a question by their management, by their managers, the first thing they're doing is opening up ChatGPT and starting to type a prompt. And they think that the output is their original thought. And so there's this balance that I'm finding. It's great to use it as a tool, but before you start, you kind of have to be thinking about, what your output should look like.
Totally agree.
We are down to the 2-minute drill. We talked earlier today. I know there's one that you weren't sure about, but all right, you ready?
Ready.
All right. A brand that you admire or that inspires you?
So it's cliche, but it's definitely Apple. It just is.
Lots of folks, select Apple for sure. Favorite app on your phone?
Well, I already plugged this. Well, one of them is Claude for sure. That's my newest favorite, but also Amazon because I do literally order from it multiple times a day.
The last website other than Amazon that you shopped from?
So two, The Real Real and Beyond Yoga.
Beyond Yoga. That's I know that brand. I've actually had their original founder on the business.
I love it. I like
Yeah,
it. It's so soft. I wear it almost exclusively right now.
right. We could have a whole conversation about all the competition in the active market.
Totally.
That's interesting. All right, something that you're not good at but wish that you were.
Cooking.
A charitable organization that you're passionate about.
The Lymphoma Research Foundation, mostly because I have a few very close friends and family who've been impacted.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
The ability to be fully present in two places at once.
Okay, so you want to be cloned.
Well, not cloned. I mean, I just, as a mom of two and like I have a team, I just want to and take care of myself. The hardest part isn't the workload, it's to show up fully like in every role. It's just not enough time.
Good one. Other than family, what's your most prized possession?
Other than family, I have a gold necklace that my pop gave to my Nana on their wedding day in 1929. And it's engraved and it says, To Rosalie, love David on our wedding day. And the date on it, June 29, 1929. So,
Sweet. Love it.
yeah.
Stacey, where can people reach out to you on social media should they have interest?
LinkedIn, also on Instagram, first name, last name.
Okay. Well, this was great. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed chatting with you in this forum. I'm lucky enough to get to chat with you in other ways as well throughout the week. So thanks for making the time. You've had an amazing career and wish you continued success.
Thanks so much, Mark.
That's it. Today's game ball goes to Stacey Warshaw for coming on the Marketing Playbook. To me, today's 3 game-winning marketing plays were as follows. Number 1, growth comes from saying yes early in your career. Stacey's path wasn't linear, and that's the point. By taking on a wide range of responsibilities early on, she built a skill set that now allows her to lead across brand, performance, and digital holistically. And number 2, balance brand and performance. You do need both. Whether she was working with founder-led brands or large organizations, Stacey emphasized the importance of storytelling and measurements. The best marketing strategies don't choose between the two, they integrate them. And number 3, the future is omnichannel, measurable, and increasingly powered by AI. From attribution challenges to personalization and testing new technologies, Stacey's focused on building smarter, more connected customer experiences and using AI as a tool to drive both efficiency and performance. Thank you, Playbook marketers, for listening to another episode. If you want to check out more pages of the Marketing Playbook, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast spot and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, the devil is in the details.